My brother called 3 days before his billionaire wedding and begged me not to come. Not because I had hurt him, not because I had embarrassed myself, but because I was, in his words, just facilities staff. My name is Sable Whitmore, and for 15 years I had kept Varrick Tower running before sunrise while my family pretended my work made me small. Then my mother told me the real reason I could not attend. They had already told the Varricks I died in a car crash on I-90 back in 2017, but on the morning of the wedding, the dead sister received 94 missed calls, and by the time I walked into that ballroom, my brother's perfect future was already bleeding through the seams. Chapter 1. The family said I was dead. The wedding invitation arrived in a cream envelope thick enough to feel expensive before I even opened it. My brother's name was printed in raised black letters beside hers. Nolan Whitmore and Clara Varrick, together with a date in September, a downtown Chicago hotel, and a reception menu that probably cost more than my first car. I stood in the narrow kitchen of my apartment with my thumb resting over the gold seal, waiting for the smallest feeling of happiness to arrive. It did not. What I felt instead was a quiet warning, the kind your body understands before your mind catches up. There was no handwritten note, no personal message, no sister of the groom card tucked inside. Just a formal invitation addressed to Miss Sable Whitmore, as if I were a distant coworker or a woman my family barely knew. I had just set the envelope on the counter when my phone lit up with Nolan's name. For a second, I almost smiled. Nolan almost never called unless he needed something. Money years ago. A signature once. A favor he later forgot to thank me for. But with the wedding so close, I let myself believe he might finally be calling to say he wanted his older sister there. I answered, and before I could say hello, he said, "Please, don't come to my wedding." The room went so still I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. I asked him why. He exhaled like I was the one embarrassing him by making him explain. "Because Clara's family will be there, Sable. Her father's partners, investors, people who matter. I don't want them finding out my sister is just facilities staff in one of their buildings." I looked down at my hands. There was a small line of pale dust across my knuckle from the supply room inventory I had finished before leaving Varrick Tower that afternoon. I had washed twice, but work always found a way to stay with me. I had never been ashamed of that. Not once. Nolan kept talking, softer now, as if softer made it kinder. "You know how these people are. They won't understand," I said. "You mean they won't understand that I work for a living?" He made a sharp sound, half laugh, half irritation. "Don't make this dramatic. It's one day." Then my mother's voice came through the phone, calm and controlled, the way she sounded when she had already decided the truth was inconvenient. Margaret Whitmore said, "We handled it already." I did not understand at first. "Handled what?" she said. "The Varricks believe you died years ago." I gripped the edge of the counter. Nolan muttered something in the background. But my mother continued as if she were correcting a seating mistake. "We told them there was an accident on I-90 in 2017. It was cleaner that way. Less complicated. Cleaner." That was the word that broke something open inside me. They had not just left me off the family table. They had buried me alive because of my uniform. I was 36 years old. I lived in Chicago. I was the senior facilities operations manager at Varrick Tower, a 74-story commercial building near the Chicago River. I managed 32 people across cleaning, maintenance, day porter, and night shift operations. I knew that building better than most executives who rode the elevator to the top floors and never looked down. I had started in 2011 on the 5 in the morning cleaning shift, carrying keys, trash liners, microfiber cloths, and the kind of exhaustion you learn to hide when rent is due. I worked my way up by showing up before sunrise, learning systems nobody wanted to explain, covering shifts nobody wanted, and treating every person on my team like the building depended on them because it did. But to my family, I was still the stain on the photograph. My father, Harold Whitmore, had never seen me that way. Before he died in 2018, he ran Whitmore Precision Parts, a small machine parts company out near Aurora. It was never glamorous, but he was proud of it because it was honest. He used to say that no clean money was small money, and no honest work made a person lesser. After he died, my mother stopped saying things like that. Margaret put all her faith in Nolan. Nolan was 3 years younger than me, polished, handsome, good at walking into a room and letting people assume he belonged there. He became the business development manager at Whitmore Precision Parts, though most of his development involved expensive lunches and promises he could not keep. From 2019 on, the company lost contracts, missed payments, and sank under nearly $1.8 million in debt. Then Nolan met Clara Varrick. Clara was 31, elegant, educated, and the daughter of August Varrick, the billionaire chairman of Varrick Properties Group. Varrick owned towers across Chicago and half a dozen other cities. One of them was mine. Varrick Tower. The building where my family thought my job made me unacceptable. Nolan's wedding was not just a wedding anymore. It was Margaret's rescue plan. A marriage into the Varrick family meant access, credibility, and an investment package that might keep Whitmore Precision Parts from collapsing. In my mother's mind, Nolan was not just getting married. He was saving the family name, and I was the part of the family name she wanted erased. That should have surprised me more than it did. In 2015, I used $1,400 I had saved for community college to pay off Nolan's credit card debt because Margaret said one bad financial mistake could ruin his future. In 2018, after Dad died, I helped pay the funeral expenses because Margaret said the company accounts were tied up. I worked extra shifts, skipped vacations, and told myself family meant carrying weight no one else could carry. I did not realize that people can get so used to your sacrifice that they start calling it your duty. A few days after Nolan's call, an email landed in my inbox from Maya Ellison, the wedding planner. I almost deleted it, assuming it had been sent by mistake. Then I saw the attachment marked ceremony notes. My hand moved before my brain could stop it. The document opened to a clean, beautiful schedule. Processional music, floral cues, family seating, a candle table near the front. Then I saw my name, late Sable Whitmore, beloved sister, lost in 2017. For a moment, I could not breathe. It was one thing to hear my mother say it over the phone. It was another to see it typed into an expensive wedding program, formatted in soft gray script, turned into a sentimental detail for strangers to admire. They had given my absence a story. They had given my life a death date. They had made me decoration. That evening, I went to my mother's house in Oak Brook because part of me still needed to see her face when I asked if she understood what she had done. She opened the door wearing pearls and a silk blouse, as if betrayal required good lighting. Nolan was there too, scrolling through his phone in the living room. Aunt Lydia sat near the fireplace with a glass of white wine, pretending she had not been waiting for the show. Margaret said, "Sable, this does not have to become ugly." I said, "You told people I was dead." Nolan looked up. "We told them a version that keeps everyone comfortable." "Everyone," I repeated. Aunt Lydia sighed like I was a difficult child. "Honey, you have always been stronger than Nolan. He has one chance to make something of himself. You can stay quiet for a few days." I looked at my mother. "Is that what I am to you?" "Something quiet." Margaret's face tightened, but her voice stayed low. "This family is on the edge, Sable. Your father's company is on the edge. Nolan's marriage could save everything Harold built." I wanted to ask her when Harold's memory had become a tool she could pick up and use against me. Instead, I looked at Nolan. He did not look guilty. He looked annoyed. For once, he said, "Can you not make my life harder?" That sentence landed harder than the first one. I remembered the bank envelope from 2015. The funeral invoice in 2018. The mornings I walked into Varrick Tower before the city was awake. The nights I came home with my feet aching, while Nolan learned how to look important in rooms other people paid for. And suddenly I understood. I was not a daughter in that house. I was not a sister. I was the correction they wanted to make before the real guests arrived. Margaret stepped closer. "Promise me you will not come to the hotel. Do not call Clara. Do not go anywhere near downtown that weekend. After the wedding, we can discuss how to repair things. Repair things as if I were the damage." I left without promising anything. The drive back into the city felt longer than usual. Chicago blurred past my windshield in streaks of white headlights and wet pavement. My phone buzzed once on the passenger seat. A new voicemail from my mother. I did not play it, not yet. I only watched the screen glow in the dark and understood that they were not done asking me to disappear. They needed me to keep being dead. Chapter 2. The uniform they hated. By 4:38 the next morning, I was standing in the service entrance of Varrick Tower with a badge clipped to my jacket and a uniform shirt folded over my arm. Downtown Chicago was still blue with early light. The river moved between the buildings like dark glass, and the lobby beyond the loading corridor smelled faintly of floor polish, coffee, and rain carried in from the sidewalks. I had slept maybe 3 hours, but the building did not care about family betrayal. Elevators still had to run. Tenants still expected spotless conference rooms. Trash still had to disappear before anyone important arrived to pretend the world cleaned itself. I changed in the staff locker room and looked at myself in the narrow mirror. Navy work shirt, black pants, practical shoes. Name badge reading Sable Whitmore, Senior Facilities Operations Manager. My brother had said it like an insult. Just facilities staff, but that uniform had paid my rent, my father's funeral bill, and Nolan's debt when he was too proud to admit he was drowning. That uniform had carried me through mornings when grief sat on my chest so heavily I could barely breathe. It had never lied about me. It had never asked me to disappear. Denise Alvarez was already in the operations office when I walked in, coffee in one hand, clipboard in the other. She was 48, night shift supervisor, and the kind of woman who could tell from the sound of an elevator whether it needed service. She looked at my face for half a second and said, "Bad night." I took the shift report from the printer. "Bad family." She gave a small, knowing laugh without humor. "Those are worse. Buildings tell you when something is broken." I almost smiled at that. The morning started the way mornings always did. I checked the night crew sign-out sheets, reviewed the incident logs, confirmed vendor arrivals, scanned open work orders, and compared elevator service notes with tenant complaints from the previous week. Caleb Brooks, our building systems engineer, came in around 5:15 with a tablet under his arm and a tool bag slung over one shoulder. Caleb was 42, calm under pressure, and allergic to corporate nonsense. He trusted me because I never pretended cleaning and maintenance were separate worlds. A leak did not care which department name was on the budget. A backed-up drain did not wait for a manager in a suit to decide whose problem it was. He tapped the tablet and said, "North riser pressure looked weird overnight, but it settled before 4. I flagged it. I leaned over the screen. Floor? 42 showed a spike, then normalized. The 42nd floor was executive territory. Boardrooms, private conference suites, art on the walls that had insurance riders, and a server cabinet that made it nervous if anyone breathed near it with a cup of coffee. I told Caleb to keep an eye on it, then moved to the morning staff huddle. Denise stood beside me while day porters and maintenance techs gathered near the supply cage. I went over the schedule, tenant arrivals, special requests, and a last-minute setup change for a conference room on 31. Nothing dramatic. Nothing anyone upstairs would ever notice if we did it right. That was the thing about our work. Success looked like invisibility. Around 7:30, Marissa Keene from HR walked into the operations office holding a folder like it contained common sense and not another cost-cutting proposal. Marissa was 45, polished, efficient, and not cruel in the obvious way. She did not insult people. She simply turned them into numbers until their lives fit inside a spreadsheet. She said the executive team wanted to revisit overtime usage for night cleaning and maintenance support. Benefits eligibility might also be reviewed for certain shift structures. I asked her if the executive team had read the last 12 months of incident reports. She gave me a professional smile. "We are looking at all departments, Sable. Most tenants never see your department." I looked through the glass wall toward the lobby, where the marble floors reflected the first wave of suits and heels moving toward security. "That is because we finish the work before they arrive." Denise lowered her eyes to hide a smile. Caleb did not bother hiding his. Marissa's smile thinned. "I am not questioning the value of your team. You are questioning the cost of the hours that make the value possible." Before she could answer, my radio cracked to life. "Water on 42. East Service Corridor. It is moving fast." Caleb was out of his chair before the message ended. I grabbed my radio, emergency keys, and tablet. Denise called for wet vacs and containment kits. The three of us reached the service elevator together, and by the time the doors opened on 42, I could hear the water before I saw it. It was not a drip. It was a hard, angry spray from behind an access panel near the executive conference suite. Water had already crossed the corridor and was creeping toward the boardroom threshold. Beyond those doors were custom wood floors, a long glass table, wall-mounted screens, and a side room with network equipment that Ike guarded like a newborn. For 1 second, the sight of it froze everyone else, then training took over. I told Caleb to isolate the riser and check the shutoff behind the mechanical closet. "Denise, pull 2 people from 39 and bring every wet vac we have. Block the east elevators from this floor. Keep tenants off the corridor. I want towels at the boardroom threshold and plastic sheeting near the server cabinet." Nobody asked if I was sure. That mattered. The first vac arrived in 3 minutes. Caleb had the valve located in 4. A day porter named Luis slipped on the water and caught himself against the wall, and Denise snapped at him to slow down before I had to. I was on my knees with a stack of absorbent pads. When the first senior manager from upstairs appeared and asked what happened as if the pipe might apologize if we explained it nicely, I said, "A supply line failed. We are containing it. I need this hallway cleared." He started to say something about the board meeting, scheduled later that morning. I looked up at him, water soaking one sleeve of my uniform. "Then give me room to save your boardroom." He stepped back. By 8:20, the spray was stopped. By 8:40, the water line had been contained. By 9, fans were running, the floor was being checked for moisture, and Caleb had inspecting the server cabinet. The boardroom smelled damp but salvageable. The art had been moved. The wood had not buckled. No tenant had seen the worst of it. That was when August Varrick arrived. I had seen him in internal newsletters and tenant event photos. 67, silver hair, tailored suit, the kind of presence that made people straighten before they realized they were doing it. Beside him stood Elias Varrick, 39, general counsel. And from the sharpness of his eyes I guessed he missed very little. 2 senior managers immediately moved toward them, speaking over each other, explaining response coordination they had not coordinated. August listened for about 10 seconds, then looked past them at me. "You are Sable Whitmore," he said. I wiped my hand on a towel before offering it, but it was still damp. "Yes, sir," he shook it anyway, firmly. "Thank you." Elias told me the executive suite was minutes away from a serious loss. Caleb, standing behind me, said, "She had the floor locked down before most people knew there was water." Denise added, "That is what she does." I felt heat rise behind my eyes and hated myself for it. One honest sentence from someone outside my family should not have meant that much. But it did. August looked at my uniform, not with pity, not with embarrassment, but with recognition. My father was a union janitor before he ever owned a share of anything. He used to tell me beautiful buildings are protected by people who arrive before anyone important thinks to be grateful. For a moment, I could not speak. Then Elias glanced at my badge. "Whitmore." My stomach tightened. He said, "My sister Clara is marrying a Nolan Whitmore this weekend." Any relation, the wet floor, the fans, the smell of burst pipe water, everything around me seemed to sharpen. I could have told the truth right there. I could have said, "Yes, he is my brother, and he told your family I was dead because he is ashamed of this uniform." But my staff was standing behind me. Marissa was nearby. Senior managers were listening. I was still at work, still responsible for a floor that could turn into a liability claim if I let my family drama take over the room. So I said, "Whitmore is not rare in Illinois." It was not a lie. It was just not the truth that mattered. August did not press, but his face changed slightly. Elias noticed too. Lawyers notice silence the way engineers notice pressure drops. I excused myself to finish the damage report. By noon, the executive conference suite was usable. By 1, I had filed the incident report with photos, response times, staff names, vendor notes, and estimated losses prevented. Marissa came by later, quieter than before, and asked for a copy. I sent it to her, August Varrick, Elias Varrick, and the operations review list. Less than an hour later, Marissa forwarded a short update to her team. The proposed overtime reduction for night cleaning and maintenance would be paused pending full operational review. Denise read it over my shoulder and said, "Look at that." We became visible. I should have felt victorious. Instead, when I got home that night, my apartment felt too quiet. The voicemail from my mother was still waiting. I stood in the kitchen, the same place where Nolan had told me not to come, and pressed play. Margaret's voice filled the room, low and tense. "Sable. Do not make this harder. Keep the story we gave them. Do not let one uniform ruin this family's future." I played it once, then I played it again. I did not cry. I did not call her back. I opened my laptop, created a folder, and named it Wedding Week. I saved the voicemail there. I still did not have a plan for revenge. I did not even know if I had the strength for one. But for the first time, my silence was no longer just silence. It was becoming a record. Chapter 3. The Lie Before the Wedding. 2 mornings before the wedding, the next piece of the lie arrived in my inbox with the subject line, "Final Ceremony Timeline." At first, I thought Maya Ellison had copied me by mistake again. I recognized her name from the first set of wedding notes. The planner with the calm email voice and perfect punctuation, the kind of woman hired to make rich people's disasters look graceful. I almost closed the message without reading it. I had already heard enough about a wedding I was not supposed to attend and a death I was apparently supposed to respect. Then I saw the attachment. I opened it. The document was clean, elegant, and color-coded. Bridal party arrival. Floral delivery. Family portraits. Candle lighting. Halfway down the page, under ceremony details, I found the line that made my fingers go cold. "Memorial candle for late Sable Whitmore, beloved sister of the groom." I stared at those words until they stopped looking like English, not just dead now. Beloved. That was the part that almost made me laugh. They could not love me while I was alive, but they had no problem polishing my memory for a room full of billionaires. I did not answer Maya. I did not correct the timeline. I took a screenshot, saved the attachment, and moved both into the folder on my laptop. Wedding Week, the name looked almost harmless, a normal folder for a normal family. Mine was becoming a place where lies went to be preserved. At Varrick Tower, I tried to focus on work. That was usually the one place where facts stayed facts. A spill was a spill. A late vendor was a late vendor. A cracked tile could not pretend to be marble just because someone wore a better suit near it. Denise found me in the operations office just before lunch, standing over the printer with the ceremony timeline still open on my phone. She looked once and said, "Tell me that is not what I think it is." "It is." Her jaw tightened. "They put you in the ceremony as a memorial. Apparently, I am more useful dead than inconvenient." Denise set her clipboard down. "Sable, keep everything." "I am. No, I mean everything. Emails, texts, calls, doorbell footage, all of it. When people rewrite your life, keep copies." I looked at her then, really looked. Denise had worked nights long enough to know what invisible people learned first. If you did not keep records, someone with cleaner hands would tell the story for you. So I kept the email. What I did not know then was that Clara Varrick was starting to keep her own doubts too. I heard later how it began. Maya had asked Nolan for a photograph of me to place near the memorial candle. A simple request, ordinary enough. A childhood picture, a family photo, anything that made the gesture feel personal. Nolan told her there was no need. Clara thought that was strange. Not cruel at first. Just strange. She asked him gently why there were no photographs of his late sister in the family slideshow, no mention of me in the rehearsal dinner speech, no stories from Margaret that sounded like memories instead of rehearsed lines. Nolan did what Nolan always did when cornered. He smiled until the smile stopped working. "Clara, my family does not like talking about it." "I understand that," she said. "But your mother told me the accident happened almost 10 years ago. You told me it was 2017. Aunt Lydia said she barely remembered the funeral. That does not sound like grief. It sounds like confusion." He turned sharp then. "Why are you interrogating my dead sister 2 days before our wedding?" Clara went quiet. She was not weak. She was not stupid. She worked in communications for the Varrick Family Foundation. She knew the difference between privacy and a narrative that had too many patched seams. Across town, that same unease had already reached Elias Varrick. Because August Varrick was preparing to sign an investment package tied to Whitmore Precision Parts, Elias had ordered a standard background review. Nothing theatrical, no illegal digging. Just the kind of public record check any family office would run before attaching millions of dollars and a trust rider to a new in-law with a struggling company. The consultant was Grant Hollis, 52, a former investigator who specialized in due diligence. Grant did not have access to my private payroll. He did not need it. He started with what should have existed if Margaret's story were true: death certificate, obituary, fatality record, accident report, public civil records from Illinois. He found nothing. But I did not know that yet. That evening, my apartment buzzer rang at 7:46. I looked at the screen and saw Margaret standing in the lobby, Nolan beside her, Aunt Lydia hovering behind them in a camel coat like she had come to witness a negotiation, not an ambush. I almost did not let them up. Then I remembered Denise's voice. "Keep everything." I opened the lobby door and left my own apartment door chained when they reached my floor. The hallway light made Margaret look older, though she had dressed carefully, pearls at her throat, hair sprayed into place. Nolan wore a navy blazer and the irritated expression of a man inconvenienced by the consequences of his own lie. "Sable," my mother said, "open the door. This is open enough." Nolan looked down the hallway. "Are we doing this where your neighbors can hear? You came to my home." Aunt Lydia leaned in. "Honey, nobody wants a scene." I looked at her. "Then stop creating one." Margaret's mouth tightened, but she lowered her voice. "You need to listen to me. The rehearsal is tomorrow. The wedding is Saturday. All we need is silence until Monday. All you need is for me to stay dead." She flinched, not because she was sorry, but because I had said it plainly. Nolan stepped closer. "Do not be dramatic. You have no idea what is at stake." "I know exactly what is at stake. Your deal, your image, your chance to walk into the Varrick family without explaining where I fit." Margaret's eyes flashed. "This is not just about Nolan. This is about your father's company. Harold built Whitmore Precision Parts with his own hands." Something hot moved through my chest. Dad did not build that company so you could save it by burying his daughter. For the first time, Nolan looked away. Margaret recovered quickly. "She always did. Your father would want the family to survive. I helped pay for his funeral." The hallway went still. I continued before she could stop me. "I paid part of the funeral expenses in 2018. I paid Nolan's credit card debt in 2015, $14,600 from the money I saved for school. I have been helping this family survive for years. You only call it family when I am the one carrying it." Aunt Lydia whispered, "That is not fair." I turned to her. Neither is asking a living woman to stay in a grave she never agreed to. Margaret's face hardened. The soft guilt was gone now, and underneath it was the truth. If you ruin this, Sable, you will not be able to undo it. I held the door steady. Neither will you. They left after that, but Nolan could not resist one more message. It came 9 minutes later. Stay dead until Monday. After the wedding, nobody will care. I read it twice, then I saved it. The doorbell camera had captured enough of the hallway conversation to show they had come to pressure me. The text showed exactly what Nolan wanted. The email showed how far the lie had traveled. The voicemail showed my mother knew there was a story to keep. By the next morning, the truth was moving in places I could not see. Grant Hollis sent his findings to Elias. No Illinois death certificate for Sable Whitmore in 2017. No obituary. No fatality record tied to an I-90 crash matching the family's account. No public proof that Nolan Whitmore's older sister had died at all. Elias brought the report to August. I would later learn that August did not explode. He did not threaten. He did not call my family liars in that moment. He only asked for one more verification. Something internal. Something his company had the right to check. Varrick Tower's HR directory confirmed it before lunch. Sable Whitmore, 36, Senior Facilities Operations Manager, active employee, not deceased. That night, Clara asked Nolan one more question while they stood in the private dining room where the rehearsal dinner would be held. If your sister meant so much to your family, why is there no photo of her anywhere? Nolan's answer came too fast. Because I said we are not doing this. Clara did not argue. She only looked at him as if she had just heard a door close somewhere inside her. At Varrick Tower, I was on the lobby level with Denise, checking the night crew schedule, when August stood in his office high above us and looked down through the glass. Elias sent him one line. She is alive, and she works in our building. August did not call me. He did not call Nolan yet. He simply postponed the signing of the investment papers until the truth about Sable Whitmore could no longer be avoided. Chapter 494. Missed calls. By Saturday morning, I had decided to let the wedding happen without me. That was the part my family would never understand. I did not wake up planning to ruin anything. I did not put on makeup with revenge in my hands. I did not call Clara. I did not call August Varrick. I did not send the folder to anyone. I made coffee in my small Chicago kitchen, stood barefoot on the cold tile, and watched the city move beyond my window, as if my brother were not about to marry into a billionaire family, by pretending I had died 8 years earlier. The apartment was quiet enough that every small sound felt too loud. The coffee maker clicked. A bus hissed at the corner. My phone vibrated once, then stopped. I did not touch it. The ceremony was scheduled for late afternoon at the Alderwick Hotel on the Magnificent Mile, one of those old Chicago hotels with polished brass doors, deep carpets, and a lobby designed to make ordinary people lower their voices. I knew the place by reputation. Varrick Properties had hosted investor receptions there. I had once overseen a cleaning crew after a midnight corporate event in one of their ballrooms, back when no one in my family was worried that my work might brush too close to their new world. I opened my laptop around 9, not because I wanted to look at the folder, but because I could not stop myself. Wedding week. Inside were only a few files, but each one felt heavier than it should have. My mother's voicemail telling me to keep the story they had given the Varricks. Maya's ceremony timeline with the memorial candle for late Sable Whitmore. Nolan's text telling me to stay dead until Monday. The doorbell footage from my hallway, Margaret's pearls bright under the apartment light, while she asked me to disappear one more time. I closed the laptop before the anger could take over. At the Alderwick, I later learned, Maya Ellison was trying to hold together a schedule that had already begun to fray. Flowers had arrived. The string quartet was tuning. Guests were checking in downstairs, men in dark suits, women in silk and pearls, people who knew how to smile while measuring everyone in the room. Reverend Paul Hensley had the ceremony program in his hand, and near the middle was the line Clara had approved, because she thought it was kind, in loving memory of Sable Whitmore. Clara saw it again that morning and stopped. She was standing in a private bridal suite with her veil still unpinned, surrounded by bridesmaids, makeup brushes, garment bags, and champagne flutes nobody had touched. Maya told her the memorial candle would be placed near the front before guests entered. Clara looked at Nolan and said, "I do not feel right using your sister's death this way if your family cannot even give me one photograph of her." Nolan's answer was too quick. "We have talked about this." "No," Clara said. "You have avoided this." He lowered his voice. "Clara, today is not the day." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and whatever she saw made her step back instead of forward. Down the hall, August Varrick had already received the final due diligence packet from Grant Hollis. Grant had not done anything illegal or dramatic. He had checked what should have existed if my family's story were true. A death certificate, an obituary, a fatal accident record on I-90 in 2017. Some public trace that Sable Whitmore, beloved sister of the groom, had died. There was nothing. Then Elias had checked what Varrick Properties had every right to check within its own systems. HR directory, active employee records. Internal credentials, there I was, Sable Whitmore, 36, Senior Facilities Operations Manager, Varrick Tower, alive. At 10:40, August asked for a private room near the ballroom, not the main hall. Not in front of guests. He was too controlled for that. Men like August Varrick did not explode when paper could do the damage more cleanly. He asked Nolan, Margaret, Clara, Elias, Grant, and one Varrick legal assistant to join him. Margaret must have known the moment she walked in. She had built the lie carefully, but she had not built it for a man who read contracts for a living. August placed a thin folder on the table. Where is Sable Whitmore's death certificate? Margaret's face did not collapse. Not at first. My mother had spent her life learning how to make panic look like offense. We do not carry that kind of pain around with us, she said. Leah's opened the folder. There is no public death certificate in Illinois for Sable Whitmore in 2017. No obituary matching the account your family gave. No fatal I-90 accident record tied to her name. Nolan said, our family handled grief privately. Clara's voice cut through the room. You told me she was dead. Nolan turned toward her with the face he used when he wanted pity. She left this family a long time ago. My mother and we considered her gone. Margaret reached for that thread and pulled hard. Sable has always resented Nolan. She resented what your family represents, Clara. If she appears now, it will be because she wants attention. August did not raise his voice. Your son is asking my daughter to enter a marriage, and your company is asking my family office to enter an investment package. If a material family history was misrepresented during that process, every document stops until the facts are clear. That was when they started calling me. The first call came at 10:58, Nolan. I watched it buzz across the counter until it disappeared. Then Margaret. Then Nolan again. Then Aunt Lydia. Then a number I did not recognize with a Chicago area code. Then Nolan 3 more times. I turned the phone face down and walked to the window. On the street below, people moved through their Saturday with grocery bags and dogs and coffee cups. No one down there knew that my family had declared me dead and was now trying to resurrect me on demand. The voicemails started. Nolan's first one was angry. Sable, answer your phone. This is serious. His second one was thinner. Listen, something came up with August. You need to come clarify a misunderstanding. By the 7th, he sounded scared. Please, just call me back. Margaret's message came next, breathless in a way I had almost never heard from her. If you care about this family at all, you will come to the Alderwick right now. Your father's company is on the line. Aunt Lydia left one too. Sweetheart, do not punish everyone because your feelings are hurt. My feelings. I stared at that voicemail for a long time. In 52 minutes, my phone showed 94 missed calls. 94. From the people who had asked me to vanish. From the people who had printed my death into a wedding program. From the people who had called my life an inconvenience until their lie became more dangerous than my presence. The 95th call was Nolan again. I answered for a second. Neither of us spoke. Then he said, Sable. His voice broke on my name like he was not used to saying it out loud. What do you want, Nolan? You have to come to the hotel. No, August knows. I closed my eyes. He knows you are alive. Elias found records. Clara is asking questions. They froze the investment documents. Mom is losing it. You need to come here and tell them it was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Yes, say you were estranged. Say you wanted privacy. Say something. I looked at the closed laptop on my kitchen table. You told them I died. It was not supposed to matter. That was Nolan. Even afraid, he still could not find remorse, only inconvenience. I said, ghosts do not fix wedding problems. He started crying then, or pretending to. I could not tell anymore. Please, Sable. If this falls apart, everything falls apart. I ended the call. My hands were shaking, but my mind was strangely clear. I called Denise. She answered on the second ring. Tell me you are not alone with them. I am at home. What happened? They found out. There was a pause. Are you going to save them? I looked at the folder on my laptop, then at the invitation still sitting on the counter. No, I said. I am going to correct the record. I showered without rushing. I dried my hair, pinned it back, and put on the dark blue dress I had bought 2 years earlier for a coworker's wedding and never worn again. It was simple, fitted, elegant enough for a room that had tried to turn me into a memory. I did not wear my uniform, not because I was ashamed of it, but because I was done letting them decide what my work meant. Before I left, Margaret sent one final text. "If you love this family, you will keep the story." For the first time in days, I replied, "If I love myself, I will end it." The car ride to the Magnificent Mile felt unreal. Chicago passed in hard sunlight and glass reflections. My phone kept vibrating, but I did not answer. The folder was backed up, the screenshots were saved, the voicemail was there. So was the text from Nolan telling me to stay dead. When the car stopped in front of the Alderwick Hotel, I sat still for one breath. Through the doors, I could see guests gathered in the lobby, tuxedos and evening gowns clustered beneath gold light, their faces turned toward whispers they did not yet understand. Near the ballroom entrance, a digital sign still read Nolan Whitmore and Clara Varrick, and below it, on a printed program displayed beside white flowers, was the line they had written for me, "In loving memory of Sable Whitmore." I picked up my phone, stepped out of the car, and walked inside. Chapter 5. The dead woman walked in the lobby, smelled like lilies, expensive perfume, and panic. For a moment, no one understood what they were seeing. I was just a woman in a dark blue dress, walking across polished marble with a phone in one hand and a printed wedding program in the other. Then Aunt Lydia saw me from beside a column of white orchids. Her face drained of color so quickly I thought she might fall. Someone whispered, "That is Sable, the name moved faster than I did." Heads turned. A waiter stopped with a tray of champagne. Two men in tuxedos lowered their voices. A woman I recognized from Margaret's social club put one hand over her mouth. I did not run. I did not look away. I kept walking toward the private room beside the ballroom, where the people who had turned me into a memorial were waiting for the dead woman to explain herself. Margaret reached me first. She caught my wrist with cold fingers and leaned close, smiling for the guests even while her voice shook. "Sable, listen to me. You only need to say there was a misunderstanding." I looked down at her hand until she let go. "You put my name in a memorial program." Her smile broke. Nolan came out behind her in his tuxedo, his bow tie slightly crooked, his face pale under the hotel lights. He looked nothing like the brother who had told me I was just facilities staff. He looked like a man watching the floor disappear beneath him. "Please," he said, "just help us get through today." I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny left. "You do not need help getting through today. You need help keeping me dead." Margaret's eyes flashed, but before she could answer, August Varrick stepped into the doorway. He was still perfectly composed, but his expression had changed since the morning at Varrick Tower. At work, he had looked at me with respect. Here, he looked at my family as if he had found rot under expensive paint. Clara stood behind him in her wedding gown, veil unpinned, eyes red but clear. Elias was beside her, a folder tucked under one arm. Maya Ellison hovered near the wall with the face of a woman realizing her beautiful ceremony had been built around a lie. Clara looked at me and asked if I was Sable Whitmore. I said, "Yes, I am not dead." The room went silent. Those 5 words did what shouting never could. They made everyone else feel the weight of what had been said about me. August asked if I was willing to show what I had brought. Not in the main ballroom, not as a spectacle, but in front of the people whose names and money had been tied to the lie. I nodded. My hands were steady in a way my heart was not. I placed the printed ceremony program on the table first. There it was, soft gray lettering beneath the floral schedule, "In loving memory of Sable Whitmore." Maya swallowed hard and confirmed that the information had been provided by Margaret and Nolan. Then I opened the email about the memorial candle. Clara looked at it like she had been struck. I showed Nolan's text next. "Stay dead until Monday. After the wedding, nobody will care." He closed his eyes. Margaret said, "That was taken out of context." So I played her voicemail. Her own voice filled the private room, tight and controlled, telling me to keep the story they had given the Varricks, telling me not to let one uniform ruin the family's future. No one moved. I did not play it twice. I did not need to. Elias opened his folder and laid out the due diligence findings in the careful voice of a lawyer who knew every word mattered. There was no Illinois death certificate for me in 2017. No obituary. No fatal I-90 accident record matching their story. Varrick's own internal employee directory confirmed that I was an active employee at Varrick Tower, 36 years old, Senior Facilities Operations Manager. Antative. Alive, Clara turned slowly toward Nolan. "You let me plan a memorial for your living sister." It was not a question. It was worse than a question. Nolan reached for her. Clara stepped back. "I did it for us," he said. "For our future." She looked at the ring on her hand as if it had suddenly become too heavy. Then she pulled it off. It did not fly across the room. Clara was too controlled for that. She placed it on the table between them, and the small sound of metal against polished wood was enough to end the wedding. "There is no us built on this," she said. Margaret made a sound then, small and wounded, as if she were the one being abandoned. August did not comfort her. He looked at Nolan and my mother with the same calm he had used while reviewing the evidence. "The Varrick family is suspending all investment discussions with Whitmore Precision Parts. Every document tied to this negotiation will be placed under legal review. Elias will send formal notice on Monday." Nolan's face crumpled. August continued. "My family will not enter a marriage or a business arrangement built on misrepresentation." There was no screaming, no police, no dramatic threat to destroy anyone. Just the clean closing of doors that Nolan and Margaret had believed would always open for them. The news reached the ballroom before any formal announcement did. Wealthy people are very good at pretending not to gossip while doing exactly that. Guests began to leave in clusters. Business partners stopped making eye contact with Margaret. A man who had shaken Nolan's hand at the rehearsal dinner walked past him without a word. Aunt Lydia, who had told me to stay quiet for family, moved away from my mother as if distance could protect her from shame. Margaret stared at me across the room. For years, she had looked at my work clothes like they were a stain. Now she stood in silk and pearls and finally understood what real embarrassment felt like. Nolan tried one last time. "Sable, Dad's company." I shook my head. Dad's company was not saved by the truth for years. It was never going to be saved by a fake death certificate that did not exist. I did not give a speech. I did not list every sacrifice. I only said the one thing I had carried all week. I was never ashamed of my work. You were ashamed of telling the truth. Then I walked out of the room before they could ask me to carry one more piece of their ruin. In the weeks that followed, Varrick Properties withdrew from the investment package. Whitmore Precision Parts had no capital to restructure its $1.8 million debt. The bank began proceedings against company assets. Margaret sold the house in the suburbs and moved into a small condo, far from the social circles she had tried so hard to impress. Nolan lost his business development position. No one needed August to blacklist him. Reputation did the work quietly. When people in Chicago's business network heard that he had invented a dead sister to impress an investor family, doors stopped opening. A few months later, I saw him at an industrial park outside the city. He was wearing a contractor uniform, working a night shift for a facilities company that handled maintenance and waste operations. He saw me from across the lot and looked away first. I did not smile. I did not mock him. I only understood the shape of the lesson. The work he had called shameful was now the work keeping him employed. August did not hand me an empire because he felt sorry for me. That mattered. He invited me to lead a pilot operations review for 12 Varrick properties across Chicago and the Midwest. I accepted on one condition. Cleaning and maintenance staff would be part of the review, not an afterthought. Marissa Keene had to sit across from me in the first planning meeting. The same woman who once wanted to cut overtime because tenants never saw us. 6 months later, the data was impossible to ignore. Fewer emergency calls, lower tenant complaints, better staff retention, safer buildings. 9 months after the wedding that never happened, I became regional director of facilities operations. On my first morning in that role, I stood in the lobby of Varrick Tower before sunrise. Denise passed me with a clipboard. Caleb waved from near the service elevators. A new employee looked at my badge and called me Director Whitmore. In my office, I kept my old uniform shirt folded on a shelf. Not hidden, not framed like a trophy. Just there, clean and plain, a reminder of where I began and what my family had tried to make me hate. They had told people I was dead because they were ashamed of my work. But my work was the thing that proved I was alive. And if you were in my place, would you have walked into that ballroom and told the truth? Or would you have let them collapse under the lie they built themselves? Who was more guilty? Nolan for burying his sister to marry into money, or Margaret for helping him erase her own daughter? And do you believe any honest job should ever be treated like something to hide? Tell me what you think, because sometimes the quietest revenge is simply refusing to stay buried.